In this story filled with tension, how will the complex relationship between Eva and Liam unfold? As the alpha, what changes will Liam's sudden return bring to Eva's life? Can they resolve their past conflicts and find a common future? If you want to know how the story of Eva and Liam unfolds, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. 11. The dos and the don'ts. My wolf yelped as she saw her mate. She was jumping around with joy. My heart started beating so hard that it almost felt like he could hear it. Heat started creeping up my face. Katya Ray suddenly wrapped his hands around me to snatch the pipe away as Dan yelled in glee. I guess they didn't get the memo that the party was over. The happiness didn't last long as I felt him stiffen. My eyes didn't leave Liam. I could see every single emotion that crossed his eyes. Right now they were blazing with rage. I reflexively moved away from Ray. I realized that his eyes weren't on me now but were on something behind me. I followed his gaze and it landed on Dan, who was pulling Ray's hair trying to grab his attention. I gathered all my courage. "Alpha," I said, loud enough to break his trance. "What brings you here?" "Yeah, real smooth." He turned his gaze to me and growled, not liking me feigning ignorance. He took confident strides and stopped a few feet away from me. Without taking his eyes off me, he said, "I could tell you what I'm here for, but I'm not sure the human standing next to you would like that." If his eyes didn't show his spite enough, his voice made it clear. "And you're not a human." "God, Ray, when will you learn the art of shutting up?" Liam smirked, his gaze never leaving me. "I tried it once, didn't work out." "Ray, will you please take Dan with you for the day?" I said in a breath. "And oh," came Liam's immediate reply. His looked at Dan, who was still sitting comfortably on Ray's shoulder. His eyes softened as he continued to look. "Mine," he whispered to himself as he took a step towards Dan. "No," I said firmly as I stood before him, shielding Ray and Dan from him. He looked down at me with a scowl. "You don't want to do this," he warned. "He is Uncle Evan's blot." "Her mommy," Dan yelled out of nowhere, happy to finally solve the piece of puzzle. Liam's mouth curved to form the most beautiful smile I've ever seen. I didn't know he was capable of that. "You recognize me," Liam said softly. "Enough," I yelled. "Ray, go." Liam snarled at me and I glared back. "Will you be okay?" Ray asked. "Yes, I've got this." "No. He's not going anywhere," Liam roared as he moved forward to take Dan from Ray. Ray backed away. Dan was now hiding in the crook of his neck. All the shouting had scared him. I held Liam's arm to stop him from moving. He stiffened. I realized it way too late that my touch brought our wolves to the surface. He turned his gaze to me. That was the moment when it all came crashing down, the longing and the years of separation. His eyes clouded as he took a step towards me. "What's wrong?" Ray's voice brought me back. I jerked away. "Are you sure you want to talk to him alone, Eva?" I nodded. Liam didn't protest this time. He just kept on looking at Dan until he was out of sight. "Who's he?" he asked, looking at the now empty space. "None of your business," I replied. "Alpha." He sneered. "The man took my own pup away right in front of me and you say that it's not my business. 1. I never said that he was your child. 2. That man has more right over him than you'll ever have." He looked at me. All his confidence and anger suddenly vanished in thin air. He opened his mouth to say something but I cut him off. "Why don't you come in, Alpha? It's not a pack. People around here don't know of our kind," I said, walking into my house. It didn't look like that. The man had no idea of who I was. He followed me. He has known me way too long to not know a thing or two. I tried to put an end to the Ray conversation. "Don't worry. He doesn't know everything." "How long?" he said, looking at the pictures in our hall. "Huh." I looked back at him. "How long have you known him?" He pointed at a particular picture of Dan. Dan was holding onto Ray's finger as he took baby steps. That was the day Dan started walking. Long enough. I don't know why, but I was feeling guilty. I shouldn't feel that way. I had a goal to achieve today, and my emotions towards the man in front of me could ruin my determination. "How long?" he gritted through his teeth. I sighed. "About 8 years. He stiffened. "That was before me," he murmured. I nodded. "Would you like to drink something, Alpha?" I was emphasizing on the last word a lot. That kind of made everything a little impersonal. Even though it was just an illusion, it helped me keep my sanity. "Do you love him?" "Ridiculous." I refused to reply and went into the kitchen to grab some drinks. "Answer me." I dropped the glass I was holding. He was breathing in my ear. You are invading my personal space," I replied. "I'm sorry," he said, backing away. "I just need to know where I stand. I need to know the people around you and Daniel." "Do you love your wife, Alpha?" I knew I was inviting death, but I couldn't let him win. His eyes darkened as they pierced through mine, but I didn't take my gaze away. If he was asking me personal questions, then he should be ready to face the music too. Yes, he snarled. Of course he does. Stupid people like me love to sit down and thoroughly pour salt all over their own wounds. I managed a nod as I forwarded the glass to him and moved to the hall. I'm waiting. He followed me. I said defeated did. That's it. Yes, did as in the past. Unlike you, I'm not strong enough to fight my bond, so I let him go. I knew I could control my emotions because I was capable of reasoning. But my wolf is an animal incapable of rational thoughts. She can't handle heartbreaks because for her it's just the one and only chance at love. I spit out. My years of pent-up frustration made their way out. My wolf, it loves you. I was crying. Now I don't. I don't even know what kind of a man you are. Just because I left him for my wolf doesn't make my love inferior to yours. I was hoping you would release me off the goddamn bond when you mark her so I could move on with him. But you didn't. I was accusing him, but my mind wasn't sane enough to process what I was accusing him of. I was just spitting out words that I hoped would hurt him the most. I'm sorry, he said, lowering his gaze, unfazed. Something really venomous rose inside me at his composure. I walked up to him and gripped his collar. Sorry. I shoved him into the wall. FCK, you're sorry. That's all I've been hearing from the moment you came into my life. I'm sick of that effing word. My fingers were now poking into his chest. Not so subtly. If you say that word another time. I stopped abruptly. What the hell did I just do? OMG. Panic attack. OMG. I just held the collar of the alpha. Oh, and I also poked him with all my strength. I let go of him immediately. He held my wrist and stopped me from moving back. His eyes were spitting fire. I could see the kind of restraint he was showing. You have quite a colorful vocabulary, he whispered. I don't know whether I would like that around my pup. As for me, I'm glad you're finally sparing me some emotions. I'll take that. I've always wondered why you would never talk to me the way you talk to other people. Don't keep your emotions pent up. Talk to me, tell me how you feel. We can't raise a child together without interacting with each other, can we? I pushed him hard, trying to pull my hand away from him. He loosened his grip. Take it. My brows scrunched. My apology, he continued at my confusion. This is probably one of the last times you are getting it from me. My eyes narrowed at the determined look in his eyes. He took my hand and pulled me towards the couch. He made me sit on it as he sat down on his knees. I want you to listen to what I've to say. I glared at him and tried to get up. Stay, he ordered in his alpha tone. I've listened to you. Now it's your turn. He continued after I gave up. I have always wanted to be a good alpha. One whom people don't respect only out of fear. Someone who can understand emotions in gray, and not just the black and white feelings that our wolves understand. I scoffed. I couldn't help it. And why are you telling this to me? I'm not sure whether you realize this, but I have no intention of being your elegant and kind lunar replacement and have absolutely no interest in knowing how you rule your pack. Because you too were a part of my pack, my people. I'm sure you have never been on the receiving end of my wrongdoings. You probably saw me as the Mr. Perfect that everyone talked about. The nerve of that man. He continued as if he never heard any of my spiteful words. That was until you became my mate, of course. Becoming my mate was one of the worst things the goddess could do to you. Today is the last time I will apologize to you for something that I didn't do. I'm sorry that fate made you suffer for the choices that I made. For all the years that I've known you, you never did anything to deserve this. I'm sorry. He apologized as he got up and went to sit down on the couch across me. But he continued. I raised my brow. I'm also apologizing for all that's about to happen from this day on. I know I won't come across as the most righteous person. The perfect image that you have of me will be shattered soon. My weakness, my faults, my dark side, you'll unfortunately have to face them all. No matter how gentle I'm to people who my wolf isn't territorial about, you have to understand that when it comes to you and Daniel, I'll have very little control. I'll try to put as much restraint as possible. So I apologize in advance for all those times that I wouldn't be able to control my wolf. I can, however, promise you that you'll never be forced into anything. And like you have already mentioned, you are bound to my wolf, not me. I will have no right over your personal life. Honestly, it's not like you are not aware of my past. I would be a hypocrite if I restrict your personal life. He would have continued, but I had enough of him already. I have no idea why you would give me such a long list of do's and don'ts. It's not like you can put your threats into action from a different continent. He narrowed his eyes at me as he leaned back in the couch with his arms spread on the couch head. That was his alpha stance. You both are coming with me, he said with finality. I chuckled. Both. You want me there, or is your humanity telling you not to separate a child from his mother? I would never want my child to be without his mother, especially when that mother happens to be my mate. I don't know if you would believe this, but it's not like my wolf didn't ever tell me to go find you and take solace in you. It did, and I refused. I knew you were happy without me, so I stopped him. But now with my child, I need to make sure that both of you are safe. You need to be near me so that I can keep my sanity and not go crazy every time you skip a breath. I'm tired, Eva. As you can see, life hasn't been really kind to me. I was prepared for a Liam who would want to snatch what was mine from me without a word, but I was not prepared for a man who would lay it all bare in front of me. He wasn't ashamed of showing me his wounds. He wasn't pretending to be someone he wasn't. He was simply telling me what he wanted and why. But that was hurting me more than it should have. He was neither snatching away, nor begging anything from me. I swear he's the most infuriating man I've ever met. He was driving me crazy. And when I say me, I mean me, not my wolf. She was probably sitting back in some dark corner and enjoying the show with some popcorn. She got her mate close to her, so she was relaxed. That traitor. We are not coming with you, I said. I didn't have the energy to argue with him, so I got to the central topic instead of lingering around the bush. I'm not leaving without you. Whatever works for you, Alpha, I said, moving to the door and opening it for him. He looked idly at me from the couch and raised his brow in question. It's late. You should leave. My neighbors are real gossip queens. I wouldn't want them to taint my name, I said, nodding towards the door. He lazily took out his phone. What are you doing? I asked, confused. You see, he looked at me. I was calling your father. I heard he has contacts in this town, so I wanted him to arrange an accommodation for me. He wouldn't want his alpha to sleep on the streets, would he? Was this man real? Do I even know him? God, I've known him all my life and I don't know, my brain isn't forming thoughts anymore. I shut the damn door with extra force. It shook the entire house. Good, I heard him say. Now will you please bring my pup home? It's not healthy to spend so much time with strangers. 12. The light to his darkness. Ray, could you bring Dan over? I was on the phone with Ray in the kitchen. I made sure Liam heard every word that I spoke. Feed him and make sure he's asleep when he's here. Why would you want him asleep? I don't want Dan to talk to him. And why is he still there? About that, you are having a guest at your home tonight. Clean up your guest room. I put the phone away from my ear. Stop yelling, Ray. I yelled back, it's either your home or mine. Do you want him to sleep in my guest room? That shut him up. Fine, I'll put bugs in his bed. You can't do that, Ray, I whispered. Did a huge rock hit your head or something? Don't you remember that he is the leader of our pack? He needs to be respected. Yeah, whatever. I could imagine him rolling his eyes. Don't do that. And when you're here, behave. You don't want to be the reason for my death, do you? I cut the call and went back to sit across Liam. What are you playing at? He asked. I don't want you to talk to my son right now. We haven't finished talking, Alpha. Will you stop calling me that? I have a name. I don't want to be on a first-name basis with you, Alpha. Are you doing this to get on my nerves? If that's the case, then it's working. Do I look like some kind of a joke to you? I questioned back. What do you mean? He was taken aback. Me, my child, our bond, are we a joke to you? Do we come across as so cheap that you take us as your backup? I could see his jaw clench, the veins in his neck protruding, all his haughtiness gone, but he didn't utter a word. I waited, expecting a reply, denial, acceptance, anything. Nothing. He didn't utter a word. I'm waiting. I'm sorry. You said you wouldn't utter that word again. I gritted my teeth, trying to control myself. I wanted to scream. My anger, I realized, was coming in waves. I was angry, scared, and frustrated all at the same time. The fear, I was trying my best to hide it, but it won't be long before he unmasks it. I don't know, he whispered. I really don't. I'm feeling so helpless, so hopeless. He looked up at me. My heart skipped a beat. His eyes were filled with unshed tears. Please, he uttered as a lone teardrop escaped. Please what? I said, not looking away from his pain. Do you want me to not ask you uncomfortable questions? Do you want me to make it easy for you? Why? Have you ever done anything that I should be grateful for? Do I owe you a favor? He looked away, but I continued. Did you come here unprepared? Did you not expect any resistance? Did you expect your mate to welcome you with open arms? Am I supposed to be thankful that you finally paid us some attention? Do you want me to thank you for coming here for Dan? I took a deep breath. If so, you are wrong. I wasn't waiting for you. We don't need you here. We are happy without you. Dan doesn't need you either. He already has a father. My child may have your blood in him, but he is Ray's son in every other way. He raised him and has been with him even before Dan was born. Even if we aren't together, even if we never see each other ever again, he would still have as much right on Dan as he has today. He can never be yours. He never was. We were just a one-night stand. That's it. I never held you responsible for him. So please, for God's sake, forget him, I said with finality. He glared at me. His hands fisted, his eyes turning darker by the second. I hoped he had enough sense not to shift here. I, on the other hand, felt like a blanket of peace covered me. My heart felt lighter, like I've been waiting to get that off my chest forever. Did I want to humiliate him so bad? I can't do that. I jumped slightly as I was brought out of my reverie. I didn't expect him to speak. I told you I was going to be shameless. Dan, he's like a distant light in my dark forest. He is my hope. I didn't know how dead I was until I heard of his existence. All these years I existed because I could feel your heartbeat in my chest, but I was never alive. I just sat in a dark corner and waited for your happiness to sip into me because I had no right to be a part of that happiness. With Dan, I want to be selfish. I don't want to sit in that corner and watch him be happy with someone else. He leaned forward and took my hands in his. My entire body jolted as if hit by a bolt of lightning. Please, let me be a part of his life, he begged. All his earlier confidence drained out. I want to feel alive again. Please. I can't. I was saved by the doorbell. I snatched my hands away and rushed to the door, gulping down a huge amount of oxygen on my way. You're here, I sighed in relief as I opened the door. Ray raised a comical brow at that. I shook my head and took a sleeping Dan from his arms. He's asleep, I commented as I turned to walk inside. What did you feed him? About that, well, you don't need to know, he replied, following me in. Remind me to kill you later. I'm too tired now. I stopped near Liam, who had a new glow in his face as he ogled at the sleeping bundle in my arms. Sit down, I told him. What? He looked confused. Sit down, I repeated. You're nervous. I don't want you to drop him. His eyes brightened up immediately and he instantly obeyed me. I put Dan in his waiting arms. Don't wake him up. Alpha. I didn't wait for a reply. I didn't turn to look at his expression. I took Ray's hand and pulled him with me to the kitchen. What are you doing? Ray complained. Dinner doesn't make itself, Ray. I opened the refrigerator, so get to work. I don't mean that, he said as we began cooking. Why did you leave Dan alone with him? He won't harm him. Ray glared at my reply. Fine. I didn't want to see whatever is happening out there right now. Why? I don't want to fall weak. I don't want to lose, I said. Why are you whispering? He has sharp ears and you'll lose if you see them together. He went back to the topic. I nodded. He told me that Dan is like a distant light in his dark forest. He is a man who has lost everything, Ray. I don't want to see that look on his face now. I'm afraid I'll give him whatever he wants without taking a second breath. He affects you that much. Yes, that's how it works. We may have no real relationship, but every time he's hurt, it pierces through me like a knife. I don't understand. He turned to me. Are we even part of the same world? I smiled. Why don't you put Dan to bed while I lay the table? Oh, where are my manners? I smiled uncomfortably as I sat next to Ray and opposite to Liam at the dining table. They were both giving each other looks. Liam flinched every time Ray touched me, and he seems to be doing that a lot today. I glared at Ray. Introductions are due. I clapped my hands in fake enthusiasm. Ray, this is the leader of our group, like I told you. And Alpha, this is my friend Ray. Alpha. Ray mocked as he murmured, what is he? A Lion King. I kicked him as hard as I could under the table. I bent forward and whispered hurriedly, I told you not to disrespect him if you want that neck of yours safe. Your legs are real strong. What kind of food do you eat? Do you feed Daniel the same thing? I'm impressed. I turned to look at Liam. My eyes widened in fear. I opened my mouth but words didn't make their way out. I kicked Liam. Oh, and they could kill me. He raised a brow at me. Wait, was that a smile trying to make its way out? He found me funny. I'm sorry, I said and went back to stabbing my food. You know, the other way to kill your food is to eat it. Ray broke the silence. I glared at him. What? I'm just happy that there is finally another person in this world who knows what it feels like to be at the receiving end of your kick. Do continue. It was a mistake, I replied. You're the only one around me who speaks so senselessly that I feel the urge to kick some senses into your brain via your legs. So Mr. Williams, what do you do? Liam asked, breaking into our argument. Call me Ray. I am a lecturer here at the town college, Ray replied, decently this time. Liam nodded. Was he impressed? What was going on? And may I know of your profession, Mr. Alpha Goddess? This was so awkward. Kill me. Liam, I work at my town's hospital. Liam replied, my town. I knew where Ray was going, so I cut him off. You'll be staying with Ray until you decide to leave. Alpha, I said hurriedly. He's our second neighbor to the left, so it really isn't much of a distance. They were silently glaring at each other. Good, at least they knew that they were in no position to counter my decision. That's the guest room, Ray pointed. Well, enjoy your stay. I hope it's not a long one, Ray said, turning away to move towards his own room. I hope the bugs you promised aren't there, Liam countered. Ray scoffed. What am I? 5. He opened the door to his room. I turned 7 last year, he said before shutting the door behind him. Liam too closed his door. He sighed as he looked at the bed. He slowly climbed it, still wary of the 7-year-old Ray. He smiled at the bright moonlight coming through the large window. It was a long day, but he wasn't complaining. It's been years since he had such a day where his heart, body, and soul were all where they wanted to be. He met his mate. He met his son. They were safe, healthy, and happy. He touched his son. He looked at him to his heart's content, although he would give anything to take his son back into his arms. He didn't know how long it will take for him to get used to looking at Dan like a normal father looks at his son, because right now he was so overwhelmed that he looked at Dan like he saw the world for the first time. That little pup was so fascinating, his little nose, his little fingers, his sleep pout. Everything about him made Liam want to never let him out of his arms. And then there was his mate. He always heard that she was unpredictable and hard to deal with, but today was the first time he got to experience that. She was never like this around him, and that shook him. He couldn't take a stand, he couldn't decide how to behave around her. One moment he thought he was in control, and the next she threw him off. She wasn't going to be easy to deal with, not that he expected otherwise. But he couldn't afford to lose to her. He didn't want to go back to that darkness. Teen, do I want to be free of you? What are you doing here? Well, I just wanted to be here, Liam said, scratching his ear awkwardly. Where else can I go? He shrugged, looking around. It's 6 in the morning, I gave him a pointed look. Well, yeah, he gave a nervous laugh. But you are out and running, he said. Right, I gave up. It's good that you're here. I had the night to think things over. I was looking everywhere but him, so why don't you follow me? We need to set some ground rules, he chuckled. You are laughing at me. I'm sorry, covering up his grin with a cough. It's just that you've been bossing me around since yesterday. Oh, I was startled. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. It's just the way I am. I'll be careful. I started walking away as fast as I could. It's okay, I guess, he replied awkwardly. Was that a question? I took him to the park that we often take Dan to. It'll be crowded. Good. There are a few things I want to clarify, I said, sitting under a tree. He copied. Now that you already know Dan. I can't undo that, he nodded, looking around. Did you tell everyone back home about Dan, or was it just your family? He looked at me with a know-it-all smile. Whatever you're thinking isn't going to work. How do you know what I'm thinking? Common sense, he shrugged. I heard about Daniel when Evan was showing him off at the pack house. My wolf reacted. I closed my eyes in frustration. There will be rumors. And neither I nor my family will make it subtle when around him. So really there is no point hiding. Plus he's the future alpha of the pack. What are you even thinking? I held my head in frustration. We are not going back, yes. And you're going to raise an alpha blood as an omega. Is that what your plan is? He looked at me like I was the stupidest person in the world. Why would you do that to your own child? You think it'll be easy for him? I'll do what I see fit for my child. I was suddenly very angry. If I want to raise him without a pack, I'll do that too. If I feel, a decade later, that he's suffering, then I may decide to go back for him. The key point being, I will be the one making the decision. I was trying to keep it down with the amount of people around us. Let's not talk about that right now. He looked away, uninterested. You're worked up, yeah, and the sun rises in the east. He had no idea how much his nonchalance infuriated me. He looked like he was talking about the weather. I took deep breaths, trying to get back to my senses. Did you tell them about us? Won't they automatically know that when they know about Daniel? Facepalm. I mean about me being your mate. He's your alpha, I kept reminding myself. God, had he been Evan or Ray or anyone else, I would have kicked him out of sight. He furrowed his brows together. He was thinking. What's there to think so much? Did I? I don't remember mentioning the word. I might have. He nodded to himself. Do I need to voice it out? Isn't it given? No, it's not. I controlled myself. Please think harder. Did you? Or did you not mention the word mate? I don't think so. He said after a while. I sighed in relief. Good. We'll keep it that way. Why? Is he kidding me? I glared at him. Here's the deal. Remember the day at the Alpha's office when you desperately followed me in with the fear that I will spill the bean? Do you know how humiliating it was for me? My mate was afraid that I'll tell the world about me being his mate. He looked away. So what is this? A revenge? No, I paused. A chuckle escaped me. Isn't it funny that I now understand why you did that? I understand your desperation. What do you understand? Eva. His voice was barely a whisper, but my heart engraved it. The first time our mate uttered our name. I looked away, not liking the amount of control he had over me. The look that people will give us. Even if we tell them that we decided to not be together, every time they look at us, they will see us as one. It's in our instincts. We can't blame them. But then I'll never be free of you and you'll never be free of me. What are you looking at? He didn't say a word but was looking at me with what I can best describe as a distant look, like he was looking at me but was not really focused on me. You, he said. It surprises me, the realization of how little I know you. Why would that surprise you? We may have been around each other for 2 decades, but we are, in all practical sense, strangers. Yes, we are. I know. He rolled the words out, dragging it longer than necessary. I decided to break the silence that lingered after that. I honestly don't know what to do with you and Dan. Can't you let things happen naturally? His voice was soft, unsure, like he was somewheres between begging and requesting. I don't know. This is all too sudden. Give me some time, God. I was such a mess. I need to talk to Ray. The words slipped out before I could stop them. It wasn't for him to hear. It's just that when I thought I was a mess, I thought of the one person who has been sorting out my mess all these years. Going to Ray with my problems was a habit. He always has a solution. My eyes darted to him and I could see the hurt cross his face before he schooled it. I was feeling guilty. Haha. Mommy. Stop. Tickles. Dan was squirming in my arms. But I'm loving it. I laughed, pulling him closer. But I'm awake now. He couldn't understand that when I was tickling him to wake him up. Why wouldn't I leave him after he was awake? Mommy loves cuddles. I gave him a loud kiss on his cheeks. He hates it. I adjusted him so he could look at my face. We have a guest. I told him you saw him yesterday, remember? He brought his little brows together, thinking hard. So that is where he got it from. Uncle Evan's brother. I was surprised how detailed the image of Liam was in his head. Evan must have shown him his family pictures and Dan could recognize Liam from just that. Yes, I played with his hair. He'll be staying with Ray for a while. Would you like to meet him? He nodded obediently. All right, let's meet him at breakfast then. Dan yelled and ran to Ray as soon as he and Liam came in sight. He pulled at Ray's pants until he was picked up. He then proceeded to dig his face in Ray's chest. My eyes involuntarily traveled to the person standing next to them. He stilled. Not a breath escaping him.
I coughed loud UMM.
Breakfast's ready. Why don't you take a seat? I fumbled as I turned to the kitchen. When I returned, there was an awkward silence at the table. Ray and Liam sat opposite to each other, but the problem was still hiding in Ray's arms. Dan, what are you doing? Don't you want to meet our guest? He nodded, still hiding. I'm sorry. He's being unusually shy today, I told Liam. He really was. Dan wasn't a shy kid. Look up, Dan. Liam was silently sitting at the other end and looking at us. God, was that man so clueless all the time? He has no idea how to lure a kid. What's the matter? Big boy. Ray ruffled Dan's hair. Don't you want to meet him? I do. I could barely hear Dan murmur. Then you are sending the wrong message, Ray whispered in his ear. He thinks you don't like him. Dan instantly looked up at Ray. His eyes wide open. He's your guest. You should make him comfortable, right? Dan nodded enthusiastically, then give him a big smile. Dan turned towards Liam with a huge smile on his face. One could literally see the effort he was putting to maintain that wide stretch. I felt his sadness in my bones even before I looked at him. He was shaking from within. I could feel it. Externally, he was fighting his emotions, trying to appear normal. That must have hurt. That must have been humiliating. For a moment, It looked like he wanted to run away, but he stayed glued to his place until his emotions faded. He then smiled back. "Hello, Daniel," he said softly. "Hello," Dan murmured, feeling shy again. "You're cute," Liam said. So he didn't know how to converse with a kid. He was nervous and it was funny. "You're cute too," Dan said. I couldn't hold my laughter any longer and burst out loud. Ray chuckled. The two of them looked at us, confused. "I'm sorry," I said, holding my stomach. "You guys sound like you have a crush on each other." Liam blushed while Dan still looked confused. It's been a week since Liam first arrived here. He was solely concentrating on Dan. He followed Dan like a hawk, taking in all his movements and expression. They were making rapid progress. They were playmates now. Although I wasn't comfortable with the idea, Ray thought it was okay to let them spend time alone. So Liam was allowed to visit Dan when he was with his nanny. I was confused with Liam's behavior. He didn't talk about moving back at all these days. In fact, he was avoiding any confrontation with me. Now that I look closely at him gulping his food down, he has been avoiding my gaze since last night. My eyes narrowed as my ever-so-present sixth sense started kicking in. I didn't like the feeling at all. I was closing the door to Dan's room after I put him to bed when I heard the doorbell. It was 11. I wasn't expecting anyone so late. I opened the door. Surprise, voices yelled. My eyes widened. Surprise it was. In front of me stood almost every person I cared about in my life: my father, mother, brothers, Luna, Alexandra, Sarah, Evan, Emma, all of them beaming at me. My heart thudded in happiness as tears made their way down my cheek. I was soon engulfed in a sea of hugs and kisses. My father sat down on the step to my house and started wailing out loud. My mother joined in. I had to hug him for a long time for his sobs to muffle down. I received at least 4 slaps from my mother and angry glares from Zach. I know I had long lectures coming my way. But right now the only thought I had was that I missed them so much. I looked over at them. I wonder how I thought that I could spend the rest of my life not seeing them. My wandering gaze landed on the only person standing calm and collected in the crowd. He was leaning against a pillar with his hands casually shoved in his pocket. And unlike last night and this entire day, he was looking straight at me. This was what he was up to. He did this. "Coward," I mouthed, my anger rising with each passing moment. He smirked. 14. "Not as good as your. Where's he?" My mother yelled, looking around excitedly as soon as they settled in the hall. I noticed how Liam didn't follow them in. He left after I saw his mother glare at him. "Where's who, Mom?" "My baby, of course you think we're here to see you," she said sarcastically. "Why would I want to see someone who abandoned me?" I rolled my eyes. "He's sleeping. It's midnight, in case you guys haven't noticed. Do you want me to wake him up?" "Of course not. We won't want to disturb our little pup's sleep," Luna Alexandra said, her eyes twinkling. "Oh shoot. I forgot he was her grandson too. God, that's awkward. Can we just peek into his room though? You know your parents have seen and talked to him over video chats." Her eyes turned sad. "I know I probably shouldn't be this excited, but can I please see him?" "Of course, Luna." She was embarrassing me. "Please follow me." "Me too," Sarah yelled and jumped from her seat. I eventually had a train of people behind me. Luna, Sarah, Zach, Nick, Dad, Mom. Evan and Emma were the last ones. They already met him, but they were still there. I opened the door to Dan's room slowly. I hope they don't wake him up. He was sleeping peacefully, hugging his favorite dinosaur. I switched the lights on and moved to let the others in. Luna stopped at the door and squeaked. She quickly covered her mouth with her hands. I rolled my eyes. They were all peeking over and around her shoulder, gawking silently. My heart tightened in my chest. There were so many people that loved my son, yet I raised him lonely. He would have received so much love had he been with them. He has only known me and Ray, but it was so incomplete without the love of a family full of people. "Breakfast, guys," I yelled for the 3rd time. Emma patted my shoulder, understanding. They were all in the living room fawning over Dan. Emma and I were the only ones cooking. Poor Dan was overwhelmed with the number of fans he gained overnight. They were all over him as soon as he walked down, rubbing his sleepy eyes. He didn't know what was about to hit him. They were finally all settled at the table with my father holding on to Dan like his life depended on it. My father has always been the drama queen in the family. "His Highness is here to spread his awesomeness, my babies," Ray yelled in a sing-song voice from the door. He has been doing this to annoy Liam these days. I choked on the orange juice that I was drinking. Emma patted my back, trying to relax me. "Forgot, Ray." Oh God. I didn't warn him to not come over. I was so busy with all the people around. I'm dead. Lay Dan, the patron yelled back excited. Yes, my big man, I'm here. He came into view. I tried shushing him, but he wouldn't look at me. He went cold like a stone the moment he saw the number of heads turned to him. Move, Liam was here. Is he crazy? I thought his mother shooed him off yesterday. Oh, how could I forget? Liam thinks that if he pretends that nothing's wrong, no one will notice that something's wrong. I was pulled out of my trance when I heard a loud thud. Evan had pushed his chair away and was glaring with so much hatred that I forgot they were brothers. What's he doing here? Evan yelled. Evan, calm down. Emma held him, but he slapped her hand away. I'll not. What is this man doing in your house, and why have you not kicked him out yet? I was shocked at his words and more so at everyone else's silence. My brothers, Liam's friends, were visibly fuming along. Evan, my mother, was holding on to my father, who was shaking with anger. I'll not have you disrespect me, Evan. Liam glared back. His wolf was stirring with anger at the challenge to his authority. I thought we made it clear yesterday. Liam, Luna said sternly. We told you to stay away. We get what you want. You've made yourself clear. We will only see each other once we come to a solution. So why don't you leave? No one wants you here right now. Liam's face darkened. I could feel tears pricking my eyes. My mate was sad, humiliated in front of so many people. My wolf couldn't take it. Liam looked at his mother one last time before storming out, leaving in clueless Ray behind. He looked at me. I blinked back my tears and shook my head at him. And who's the hottie? Sarah whistled. I sighed in relief, thanking Sarah in my head. He's my lay, Dan chirped in, happy to finally understand something. Did I tell you how territorial he was? He was a wolf after all. Hello, Ray greeted awkwardly. He's my friend and also our neighbor, I finished hurriedly. Sarah whistled again. Just friend? Nick asked. Zach and Evan had now shifted their glare to Ray, who squirmed under their gaze. Oh, come on, I yelled, irritated. Ray, you'll be late for work. So why don't you grab whatever satisfies your hunger and run before they kill you? Ray nodded slowly, not taking his eyes off Nick. What about Dan? He asked. He'll spend time with the family today. I'm not going to work either, I said, packing whatever I could grab for him. Wait, my mother said, is he your mate? Won't you introduce us? I stopped. I slowly looked at Ray. He looked back. He's not my mate, I whispered. Oh, came her disappointed voice. I'll still introduce you though, I said. Mom, Dad, this is Ray Williams. He's my friend from college and he has been our family and our only support for the past years. I don't know what we would have done without him. Ray's eyes widened at me. I smiled encouragingly. He deserved a proper introduction. Ray, that's my father. My father nodded and my mother smiled as she wiped her tears away. Those are my twin brothers I told you about. Zach and Nick, my brothers, grunted in acknowledgement. Luna, Alexandra's Evan's mother, she smiled warmly at him. That crazy girl right there is Sarah. Sarah blew him a kiss. You already met Emma and Evan, I finished. Ray greeted all of them. Why don't you have a seat, my father said, surprising me. I quickly recovered as Ray eagerly made his way to his chair. No. Dad, he's getting late for work. Aren't you? I gave Ray a pointed look. Oh, why? Yes, he fumbled, I guess, but Dad, you can grill him later. He's not going anywhere. I pulled Ray along with me and only stopped once we were at the door. Here I gave him his breakfast. But why did you kick me out? They loved me, he pouted. Yes, they loved you way too much. I rolled my eyes. Trust me, you don't want them all over you. Just ask Dan what they do to people they love, my poor baby. Plus there would have been a lot of questions. We need to prepare that before I unleash them on you. Now go, you'll get fired, whatever. You're just jealous that we're getting all the attention. I'll call you. Let's meet up after your work. We have problems to solve, I called after him. Yes, ma'am, he yelled. Oh, so you're meeting him secretly? I yelped and backed away. Sarah was grinning suggestively at my face. It's not what you think. Sure, she made her way back. Everyone. She's meeting Loverboy in secret today, she yelled. I've things to discuss with you. My mom dragged me to my room and closed the door. What are you going to do about Liam? I was surprised at her directness. You guys are being too harsh on him, I said, trying to act natural. I was in heat, Mom. It wasn't exactly his fault. I'm not talking about that. What about the council? What council? You don't know. He didn't tell you. We all came rushing here because of that. I can't understand you, Mom. She was making me nervous. Liam said you refused to come back home, and because he wants Dan, he'll go to the council. I never knew he could be like this. Such a good boy he was. But if he goes to the council, he'll surely win. Alpha blood and the next in line, they won't let him to be raised like this. The alpha wolves high up will surely support him. Mom, calm down. I was panicking myself. He won't do that, I'm sorry, but I need to go. I rushed out of the room. Down the stairs, I could hear people yelling, but I didn't stop. I took the familiar path to Ray's place. Set the password hoping I would find the one I was looking for here. I climbed the stairs, his door opened before I could knock. I raised my brow. Oh, come on. We are wolves, remember? I nodded and entered. I took a deep breath before looking at him. What is my family talking about? The council, trying hard to breath normal. Oh, that, he said nonchalantly. I just made that up to bring them here. You're telling me it's no big deal? My anger rising. Calm down. I'm just telling that I never ever thought of actually going to the council. Trust me. You effing threatened my family and you want me to calm down. What's wrong with you? I yelled. I just wanted them to convince you and take you home. You know I didn't mean it. No, I don't. I don't know you remember. Stop confusing me with your wife. She must have understood your twisted mind, but she's dead and I'm no. Things happen fast. One moment he was pleading and the next his eyes turned midnight black. A beastly growl escaped his throat as he raised his hand. I impulsively closed my eyes. When the contact I was expecting didn't happen, I opened them again. His hand was hanging midair, his breaths heavy, his wolf reflecting in his eyes. Why did you stop? I yelled. Go ahead. Slap me. I took his hand and pulled it, trying to finish what he began. He fisted his hand and pulled it away with such force that I was dragged along with it. He held my arms to stop me from falling. I looked away. Instead of letting me go, he increased the force on my arms. It was getting painful. I winched, but he didn't let go. Look at me, he gritted out. When I didn't, he shook me and I was forced to look at him. This is the one and the only time I'm holding back. You bring her name between our fights one more time, and I'll see to it that you suffer the consequences. Did you not learn the basic courtesy of not disrespecting the deceased? He spit out. I could see disappointment along with the obvious anger in his eyes. Why was he disappointed? What did he expect of me? Why would he have expectations? I looked away. His hold loosened, but he didn't let go. His anger was fading fast and I knew why. Our mind was slowly pulling us in another direction and we were losing focus. We may not have noticed our proximity, but our wolves did. I pushed his hands away and sprinted back. Stay away, I said after I composed myself. I was looking everywhere but him, from my son and me. I don't want to know your intentions. I don't want to know you. My heart ripped with every word I spoke, but I continued. I don't want you anywhere near us. We were so happy before you came by. You ruined everything. Please stay away from us. He took a sharp breath. I can't do that, he said in his alpha tone. Why can't you? I did it for you when you wanted me to. My eyes flared at him. To have a mate and to still live happily without them. You taught me that. I challenged. He closed his eyes in frustration. When he opened them again, they were cold and determined. He strode towards me. I moved back, but he didn't stop until my back touched the wall behind me. He placed one hand on the wall right next to my head and looked down at me. That's what you do when you want to intimidate someone, and he was doing a great job at that. Maybe I wouldn't do that because I'm not as good as you. I'm selfish. You of all the people should have known that. I didn't wait for my mate because waiting for you was hurting me. I wanted to be happy, so I fell in love with a woman who made me happy. Had I been like you, I would have stabbed my heart with a knife but still not given up. He snickered. I'm sure he must have been tempting. He's a good man, so much better than me. But you still couldn't bring yourself to be with him all these years despite thinking that I was happily married. That's who you are and this is who I'm. He lowered his gaze down, away from me. Being good, it comes so easily to you. So you wouldn't understand the effort that I put in reining my animal. He took a deep breath and moved away. Come home. Stay in my sight. I want to make sure you both are safe and healthy. Let Daniel be safe and free in his own territory. Let me watch him grow. That's all I need. I won't utter a word about the bond to anyone. I won't make it obvious. I'll try to not interfere in your life as much as possible. No, I said and moved to the door. You have until tonight to decide. His voice stopped me. The doorknob half twisted in my hand. If you decide to stay here, I'll take your freedom home with me. What do you mean? I turned around to face him. You want to be free of me, don't you? You don't want them to know about the bond. Come with me and you can be free. You can even bring that man with you, you're sick. What have I ever done to you to deserve this? I've only showed you kindness. All these years I never blamed you. I only blamed the circumstances. I knew anyone in your place would have done that. I would have done the same thing had I been you. I kept defending you and this is what you give me in return. I was crying now. I felt so helpless. I thought I knew of the basic goodness in the man in front of me, but I was wrong. He was nothing like his father or his brother. He was always cold and aloof, but he was soft-spoken and treated everyone well. We thought he was perfect without a flaw. Turns out he only cares about himself, and that was the reason he was aloof. His selfishness was his flaw. He was right, Ray was so much better of a man than him. Yet it's all thanks to him that I can't be with Ray. I didn't like the direction my thoughts were turning to. His cruelness was making me want to rebel. I told you I wasn't ever again going to say sorry for the moon goddess doing. You didn't do anything. It's not your fault. You were just chosen for the wrong person. So go away. Let me live with the right person. I can't do that. The last few days that made you unhappy were the happiest days of my life. You can hate me all you want, but do so while staying in my sight. I'll take your hatred and all your complaints. I walked away and shut the door hard behind me without another word. Remember? Tonight I heard him as I climbed down the stairs. 15. What is she made of? Liam. To have a mate and to still live happily without them, you taught me that. I closed my eyes at the memory. She has the ability of getting under my skin in the most painful way possible. She is our mate, our equal. She could get away with saying things. I was surprised at how calm my wolf was every time she ordered us around. He was letting her do that while he couldn't even take a harmless joke from Maya. The fact that she was right about everything she said and did was making it harder for me to breathe in the same space as her without my conscience killing me. She didn't do anything to humiliate me. She was so put together that it sometimes seemed like the bond wasn't affecting her at all. I would be lying if I say that I expected her to be like this. I didn't. I was nervous as hell before I stepped into her place. I was expecting her to kick me out, although that wouldn't have gone very well, to hate me, to take revenge by showing off the man with her, like women usually did to relieve their anger. But she was so real, so true to her emotions that it threw me off guard. It hurt me more. I could take drama, I was prepared for it. But the fact that she meant every word she said, and that none of her actions were impulsive, frightened me as much as it excited my beast. When I saw her for the first time after years, I didn't expect the pain to hit me that bad. I shouldn't be feeling jealous. I didn't deserve to feel any emotion that was associated with hope in the remotest possible way. My wolf growled at the sight. They looked so complete. They looked like a living image of what I had dreamt of my future. She was so happy that she didn't even feel my presence. That was the extent to which the years have weakened our bond. The day she told me that she wanted to be free of me was the day I realized how similar our thoughts were, and I didn't like the idea one bit. That was the same fear I had when I followed her to my father's office all those years ago. She was so different yet so similar to me. There were so many layers to her. And at that moment I was very much aware of my curiosity to unfold her. My wolf was probably getting curious about its mate. That day also made me realize how important that man was to her. That was a reality check for me. I couldn't entertain my wolf's desires. It was wrong. It would make me no different from all those wolves who forced themselves on their mates just because they had the right to do so. I have always wanted to be different from them. I didn't want to be a mindless animal. There was a reason we were half wolf and half human. If the goddess wanted us to be just animals, she would have made us so. It is hard to control our animals, and more so if you are an alpha. Alphas have to keep the pack together, and that requires us to have undisputed dominance on the rest of the pack. In the animal world, it's all about the strongest dominating the weak, or taking them under protection. If an alpha's weak, he will be overthrown, and rightly so. It was never my intention to drag her to the council. I couldn't ever do that to anyone, let alone my own mate. Those were mere words to lure in the people who had the capability to take her home. That was the sanest way I could think of that would bring her home without hurting her. To leave them here was never an option. I couldn't let my son grow up like this. He had nothing to do with our issues. Him growing up among humans without knowledge of his own pack was like a lion cub growing among a herd of deer. That will weaken the cub. It will make the cub think and act like a deer. There were some basic rules that you have to adhere to no matter what. She made the mistake of raising a wolf's blood away from the pack. She was thinking with human emotions. She should have brought him to me no matter what the circumstances were. I understood her, but the law doesn't understand emotions. My wolf's territorial nature was also starting to slowly show its ugly head. The hatred for Ray was growing along with the desire to rip his head off every time he touched her. He couldn't understand why I had to stay away from her. He was also very eager to play with Daniel. He tried to make me shift in front of Daniel twice. I need to ask Eva if Daniel knows anything about himself. I don't want to scare him in case my wolf became uncontrollable. She knew I had no intention of going to the council, but she was hurt by the fact that I had threatened her family. She also knew that she couldn't hold on to her ego for long. She would have to give in to reality eventually. Her frustration was reflected in her choice of words. The day we lost Maya and our pup was engraved in black in our heart. We saw them lying motionless in front of our eyes. Every time the day is mentioned, my wolf goes crazy. Losing our pup had physically affected us. We lost a part of us that day. We couldn't control our mind and wandered in the forest for over 2 months. The darkness of those days still sends my wolf on the edge. We didn't expect our mate to not understand our pain when she felt every bit of it. I got the sudden urge to see my pup. I haven't seen him all day. I made my way to his place knowing very well that I wasn't welcome there. Alpha Eva was standing with Ray by his car at the gateway. I closed my eyes trying to put my now anxious wolf down. "You shouldn't be here." I opened my eyes to her concerned voice. It's funny how she is the only person from my pack who's willing to talk to me. I wonder what this woman is made of. "What are you doing out here?" I asked, trying to sound as nonchalant as possible. I wish she fumbled. "With all the craziness, I thought I'll take her out for a drive," Ray answered for her. My wolf growled. She heard it. "We have things to discuss," she instantly explained. It did nothing to calm my wolf down. I nodded. "I just wanted to see Daniel." "Oh, they are playing right there," she pointed at her lawn. I moved closer. "But I don't think you should go in there," I nodded. I looked at Daniel. He was playing with Evan, Nick, and Zach. I should probably not disturb them. My heart itched to run to him. I turned to leave. "What is he doing here?" "Eva." I sighed in relief when I saw Liam turn away. "What is he doing here?" I heard Evan yell. Panic coursed through my heart. I hated dramas, especially those that involved powerful bloods. "Do you have no self-respect, Eva? Why are you talking to him? This is the man who wants to take your son away from you." Before I could tell him to shush up, I heard Liam growl. I flinched. It was so loud and powerful that even Ray could hear it. He turned to look at Evan, his eyes dark. He made no effort to stop his wolf when it bared all teeth and howled. I shrugged off Ray's hand that was holding me and rushed to Liam. I held his hand. "No. Please don't," I begged. I put the other hand in his chest to calm him down. He was breathing hard. His body temperature had risen up. "Not here." He focused his angry gaze on me. "Please," I begged again. I could feel his eyes losing focus. "Yes," I whispered, encouraging him. Before he could completely calm down, I was harshly pulled away from him. Ray dragged me to a safe distance from Liam and pushed me behind him as he glared at Liam. Liam growl focused on Ray this time. He took a purposeful step towards us. "Don't take another step in her direction," I heard Evan yell. The situation took an ugly turn in a blink. One moment Liam was glaring at Ray, and the next he was running towards Evan. And then the worst happened. He shifted midair and landed on Evan. There was chaos everywhere. Everyone rushed out of the house. Dan was wailing, but everyone was too shocked to pick him up. I was too far away from him. One wrong move from me could harm my son. Ray's step faltered. He almost fell down but was supported by the car behind him. Luna Alexandra held on a pillar for support. Emma fell to the ground. None dared to step forward. Liam was howling over Evan, who laid still and made no effort to shift or push him away. Liam howled again and this time picked Evan's neck up by his teeth and threw him at a distance. Emma shrieked. Evan hit a tree that bordered my house. He was bleeding heavily but was conscious. This time Luna Alexandra walked forward and stood between her sons. "Liam, calm down. There are humans here," she cried. He growled in response and took a step forward. He wasn't going to calm down that easily. I saw my mother from the corner of my eyes pick a crying Dan up and rush inside. I took a sigh of relief. At least my son was safe. I rushed to Evan and helped him up. Luna Alexandra was still trying to convince an advancing Liam. Emma was sobbing away. Submit, Evan, I told Evan. His body was too weak to move on its own. I put him on his knees. He bowed in submission. I kneeled along with him. Luna Alexandra sidestepped at my voice. Liam came near us. I kept on looking at him, hoping he would look back. He was instead towering over Evan and growling at him. Evan bowed further at his command. He finally looked at me. I held his gaze. Tears were involuntarily falling down my face. I was cold with fear. He backed a step and stood there for a long time. He slowly shifted back. I left the breath I was holding. Everyone bowed their head. Evan Wood, he bellowed, 3 months 24/7. Northern border. You will patrol. Alone. He commanded, the next time you misbehave, you'll no longer have a pack to call your own. He turned and growled at everyone, daring them to oppose him. No one raised their head. My heart cried out for Evan. It was a torturous punishment. He could die. My mother cautiously walked towards him and forwarded a pair of shorts, keeping as much distance as possible. He snatched it from her, wore it, and rushed out as fast as he came, throwing one last glance at me. The whole thing happened in a span of 2 minutes, but it felt like eons. I took the support of the ground. My father was the first one to recover. He rushed to check on Evan. I had no time to slowly come back to my senses. I had to get up. People were starting to gather around our house. They must have heard the howls. It was good that we had enough walls on either side to at least hide the shape of a full-grown wolf. So unless our neighbors were in their terrace at that time, it was most probable that they didn't see Liam's wolf. They were at the front gate now. I thought of talking to them and making up a story. I halted my steps. Dan. Ray. I looked around, alarm ringing in my head. Ray was now sitting on the ground, supported by his car. People were talking to him, most probably inquiring. But their words didn't seem to reach him. He sat there like a stone. I took a step towards him but stopped as my son's crying image ran into my mind. I turned around, prepared to go to Dan. My mother stopped me. We'll take care of him, she said. But he's a child, you can coax him later. That human needs you more, I nodded apprehensively. I walked to Ray and lowered myself. Let's go for that drive. I touched his arm lightly. He jerked away, looking at me with wide eyes as if in a trance. I let my hand fall to my side. Did he see me as a monster now? Relief filled me when recognition crossed his eyes. His eyes softened. He was still dizzy, so I tried again. I held his arm. He didn't push me this time but looked away. I was helping him up when someone yelled, Mrs. Adams fainted. Ring the ambulance. I stopped midway. God, this wasn't happening. Mrs. Adams was the 75-year-old nosy neighbor. Every time she saw me, she demanded I set a date for my and Ray's wedding. I sighed. I don't know what was going to happen, but right now I need to take care of Ray. I opened the passenger door for him and he quietly stepped in, still not meeting my gaze. I drove away, leaving the craziness behind. It was going to be a long evening. At least no one died. If you enjoyed today's video and want to continue following Eva and Liam's journey, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.